Hello, welcome to County Connections. I'm Judge Houston Wells, and today we're at a special place in downtown Frankfort, right across from the State Transportation Building. It's called the Sig Lusher Brewery. Our special guests today are Dylan Greenwood, Brewmeister, awesome, and Nathan Kreider, CEO, or one of the CEOs of the organization, and Tim Lusher. Tim, it's your family. Welcome. Tell us about the history of Lusher Brewing.
I appreciate it, Judge Wells. Thank you. History of Sig Lusher Brewery goes back to my great-great-great-grandfather, and sometimes I have to count how many grandfathers back that is. But it goes back to when he came to Frankfort in 1866. Obviously, we know the time period. Frankfort was not his first choice, but it was his best choice. And he opened up Sig Lusher Brewery very near to where we're standing at the moment, actually across the street from us. So, after the closure in 1891, which we all know was a successful brewery, but unfortunately people do pass away. Took us a little while to kind of decide if we were reopening after that remodeling, but after 128 years, we decided to pull the trigger. In the past 6 months, actually just coming upon a year, we reopened Sig Lusher Brewery about a month and a half ago. So, Nathan, you want to start with what we're doing now?
Sure. Yeah, as Tim said, we got the tap room open December 27th, a couple days after Christmas, and the reception of the community has been fantastic. So that was the goal. It was kind of remarkable and shocking, frankly, to realize that as the breweries have exploded all around the country, and here even in Kentucky, Lexington, Louisville, Frankfort, there still hadn't been one in 128 years. So we were super excited, and we assumed that the community would be too, but you don't know for sure until you open up. So when we opened our doors, especially on grand opening night, it's a moment we'll never forget because there was a line of 30 or 50 people out the door a half an hour before we opened, and it was 300 people, shoulder to shoulder. Really amazing time. And so ever since then, it's been great too. The people seem to love the beer, love just having a place to go. We're starting to do lots of programming. So tonight, I think, is Bachelorette night. Tuesday night is Run Club night. Wednesday night is Trivia night. Saturday's Yoga mornings. We've got a lot of food trucks. So we're starting to do that programming that really are conducive to community and people getting together and friends and family. And so that's what we've tried to do, and I think we're doing a pretty good job so far.
Awesome. And we have a Brewmeister. Tell us, I would think that if you know something about distilling, you have a master distiller. I say a Brewmeister would be on the same terms as a master distiller.
Sure.
So welcome. Tell us about what you do.
All right. Well, my main job right now is developing the recipes. Unfortunately, there weren't any recipes that Sig left us that we know of at this moment. So a lot of my job was to find a beer that was around the same style that Sig would have been brewing at that time in this area, and also try to create a beer that everybody's going to enjoy. That's going to be flavorful, but yet you can have more than one of them without, without it hitting you against the face. So basically, I've been spent almost a good part of a year developing the recipe for our flagship, which is a Swiss-style Pilsner. And we're really happy with it. People seem to be very happy with it. Like I said, it's a real crisp, easy drinking Pilsner, not too hoppy, not too malty, just right down the middle, enjoyable beer. And then from there on, I go and I develop more recipes. So we have a amber wheated lager that's on right now and will always be on, that we call our 66, our Sig 66. And I made that really just inspired by what ingredients Sig would have been able to get his hands on in the time period that he was brewing, like I said, in this part of the country. And going on, we will experiment with different styles, staying within the realm of lagers, with inspiration from the European traditions of beer brewing, but also adding in the American touch, because Sig obviously was a Swiss American. So that's kind of my job so far.
Yeah, that's a cool job. Very cool. You mentioned that you all are the first, and you are, and that's amazing. It's amazing that Frankfort hadn't tapped into it, but you're starting something great here. And we're in the facility where you're making the beer. So, Tim, tell us a little bit about what goes into making a beer and what the future holds.
Okay. A little bit of both. And making the beer is probably Dylan's forte, a little bit more than mine, because there's a trade secrets that I'm sure he would. Well, he's not far enough away to kick me. So, as far as future holds, we're here for one reason. It's our hometown. We have a heritage. Thank you. We have a heritage to be here, and we want to tell that story. We want to tell the story of why we were here, why were we the first, why are we the only at this point, and then continue that tradition my great-great-great-grandfather started with his beers. But as far as where we are as a brewery, we have lofty goals. Frankfurt is our home. Frankfurt's our base. And we've got a lot of traditions here, not only just in the brewing, which if you come down to see us, we'll tell you all of this in detail. But we've got a lot of history with the bourbon community. And in fact, people forget that in 1866, beer had a history. Bourbon had nothing. Bourbon was just starting. And so there were actually more beer drinkers than bourbon drinkers in the state of Kentucky. And Sig did pretty well. We've got the records of his production levels from 66 until his death. He got up to 6,000 barrels, I think, at one point. And that's respectable now to do 6,000 barrels in a year, let alone when Kentucky only has, 100,000 people at that time? So that's, people like their beer. Dylan can get into a little bit more of the chemistry of the beer, the bourbon, et cetera. They're very close cousins as far as how you distill them or how you ferment them, but everything's yeast based. So with breweries, they kept yeast always alive. Distilleries, however, given their lifespan, that's something that they always need, but it's not a constant distilling process. We made that yeast. And that's a story we want to tell. We had a close tie to what's now Buffalo Trace, E.H. Taylor, at that time OFC Distillery. We made the yeast for that bourbon industry. That was what we were here. Sig was specifically unique I say unique because he held the patent. Sig invented ice for all practical purposes. He held the patent on the first ice machine, first anhydrous ammonia ice machine. So the story goes that we had cleaner ice in Frankfurt than New York City for 20 years plus? Cool. So, particularly with our style of beer, lager, ferment, to get into too many details, it takes that cold. And so if people of Frankfurt remember back far enough, the Cave restaurant, that was our lager cave. That was what Sig built to house all of his beer and to ferment those. So we've got a lot of history we like to tell when people come in. That's our basis. That's our heritage. We call it a history, our historically good beer, and that's what we reference. But we've got a lot of lofty goals for this place. I'm going to pass this to Nathan. He can kind of tell us where we're going, if that's good.
Before you do that,
Sure.
There's something that I want you to explain, because you mentioned your ties to the bourbon distillery. Right. So right here next to us are bourbon barrels. Yeah. Talk to us about bourbon barrels and how you're going to use that.
So this is actually something that's coming up this is our first beer. So if we want to say, actually we're going to make the claim, what's behind me, or actually behind Dylan, and if we want to pay in that direction, that in that tank is the first beer brewed in Frankfort, Kentucky in 128 years commercially. What are we going to do with that? We're going to drink it. That's what we're going to do with it. But we're not going to drink it. Yeah, we're going to drink it. We're not going to do it immediately, though. So, we know it's a special beer. We know that people are going to be very interested in this. This is literally once of a lifetime ever to have that first beer after so many years. We're going to take that beer and we're going to put them in these barrels behind me. And we've got a couple styles of barrels. Dylan specifically marries beer when we age to that barrel. The top two barrels are W.L. Weller barrels that Buffalo Trace was kind enough to line up for us. The bottom two are Buffalo Trace barrels. The W.L. Weller barrels will house our Sig Santa. And Sig Santa is a winter lager. It is a tradition of a Swiss-style winter lager. We are doing a little bit of a twist from it. In Europe, you would age it for 10 months just in a steel or wooden barrel to really increase that fermentation. So what you get is a really big-bodied, almost a barley wine type beer. We're taking that one extra step because not only we are Americans, we are Kentuckians. Mm-hmm. We're taking that beer that's coming out at 13.7. Is that right, Dylan?
We'll see.
It's going to be high, but we're going to take that already high alcohol beer, put it into bourbon barrels for 10 months, and this year is going to be slightly less, but release this annually in October, or Oktoberfest, late September, and that'll be the Sig Santa. So we're looking for somewhere in the 16% range, but you're going to get a beer that, quite honestly, very few people have tried.
Cool.
And so we work with the bourbon industry, particularly Buffalo Trace, because of our ties, my family's personal ties to them, to do special projects like this. This is going to be not only signature for us, but hopefully for Frankfurt. The barrels beneath us, those are Buffalo Trace barrels. Those will house our Sig 7. The Sig 7 is a 7-year mead. And so once these are filled, we'll start working on those. And for the next 7 years, whoever looks at these barrels, there's going to be something in them. But, we're all about the long, slow process.
Cool.
So
that's amazing. So as you were speaking, I was thinking, okay, well, what about the market? Are you going to take your beer out to the other markets that are around? Because as we all know, and you're a part of it now, the microbreweries and the micro beers and the specialty beers are all out, and so are you going to be doing that? You want to speak of that, Nate?
Sure. Yeah, as Tim said, we have lofty ambitions, and we've already started distributing. So, which is pretty rare for a microbrewery as young as us to already start distributing. But we've got a distributor that's based out of Versailles that's going to be doing all of our distributing in Frankfurt and Lexington. We're already in bars in Frankfurt and Lexington. I just got a list this morning of about 20 or 25, and that's just in the last week. So yeah, we're doing that. We're proud of that. The Pilsner is the only one that we will be distributing because we want for the taproom to be a destination. In order to do that, you can't give them everywhere else what the experience that we can give them here. And so all of these other specialty brews that Dylan's making, we want to give people a good reason to come here. So all the only one we're distributing is that one. And then here in the brew house, we'll be making all kinds of crazy beers, as Tim just described.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. So Dylan, tell us as briefly as you can for the general audience, what's the difference between a Pilsner beer and a lager beer? What separates those different types of beers?
Sure. Well, the two main types of beers are lagers and ales, and basically lagers go low and slow, and ales go faster. So a Pilsner is a type of lager. So we use a lager yeast that was developed in Switzerland hundreds of years ago, and the Pilsner, what makes a Pilsner is basically the grain bill and the amount of hops you have in it. Some Pilsners, like American-style Pilsners, will use corn and rice added to the mash. This is a 100% malted barley grain bill. So this is what we call, like I said, a Swiss-style Pilsner, which isn't going to be quite as hoppy as, say, a Czech-style Pilsner, but isn't going to be as malty as a German-style Pilsner. Like the Swiss, it stays right in the middle. So, yeah.
Very good, very good. I hope that you've, as audience, enjoyed this and learning about beer, learning about our great brewery here, the Sig Lusher Brewery, once again across from the State Transportation Building. We've talked about the beer. Now you've got food. Talk a little bit about, Nathan, you want to talk about the food that you offer here?
Sure. Yeah, we make a bit of our own here. We have bagel sticks which come from an amazing bakery in Cincinnati, a friend of Tim's, called Marx's Bagels. And so we have 5 or 6 varieties of bagels and all kinds of different spreads. Those are super popular and absolutely delicious. We've got some scones. Sometimes they're made from the Midway Bakery in Midway, obviously. And we're always experimenting. So we're trying new things. I think we're about to release some country ham sandwiches. But we don't have kitchen space, so we're somewhat limited. So we're doing food trucks very regularly. So at least 3 or 4 days a week, we're doing food trucks as well, which is also great to support other local businesses. And breakfast, yeah, the breakfast. We've got coffee every morning. Most people don't realize we open at 7 in the morning, 5 days a week with coffee. So.
Great. Once again, across from the State Transportation Building, Frankfurt's own Sig Lusher Brewery since 1866. Great place to come and socialize, a great place to come and eat, and even has breakfast. Hope that you've enjoyed this. A special thanks to our good friends Dylan, Nathan, and Tim. Thank you for being here. Thank you for opening this great brewery and telling us a little bit about it. I hope that you've liked and enjoyed our program, County Connections. Please like and share us on Facebook if you would. Thanks again for watching County Connections.